Thinking about it. Right, we're live. Brilliant. So, hi Emma, and thank you for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me.
It's so exciting. I am literally, genuinely so excited about all these people taking the time to chat to me. It's really exciting. So it's one of the upsides to COVID, I think, that the whole world seems a bit more connected somehow.
Yep, just having the opportunity to, even with like the Liberty stuff, to have online shows and get to meet a whole bunch of people across the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we wouldn't have had a chance to take part if they were all live in person shows. So yeah, it's been totally ace. Well, it hasn't been ace, obviously, but from that point of view, it's been really good. So, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? So you're the manager of the Colorado Liberty Club, is that right?
Yep. So
tell us a bit more
I
about
grew up in Colorado and have always had a passion for animals, but didn't really do much with it when I was younger. I was actually a competitive runner for a number of years. And that adventure took me to going to undergrad college at the University of Kentucky, which I decided to go to there mostly because of the horses. And I knew I wanted to do something with horses and was kind of leaning towards being a vet. So I went there because they have a really good equine program, and was actually blessed to meet Elizabeth James, who is married to Dan James now, but this is before they were married. Right. She was one of my professors there back when she taught at the university. So that's kind of how I got involved in all of this, is her being one of my professors. And at one point she was talking about a clinic that Dan was doing at some point, and I was like, oh, okay, like maybe I'll try that out, even though I don't have a horse right now. So yeah, I'm very outdoorsy. I like to work with my hands, and so the equine industry has really been perfect for that.
So how did you end up working for them then?
So long story short, I knew about Double Dan Horsemanship through a friend of mine who had shown me some videos of the things that they do. And kind of was like, oh, like that's neat, but had no idea really much more about it until I found out that my professor Elizabeth was about to marry a guy named Dan from Australia who trained horses. And it didn't really click until she was talking about him doing a Liberty clinic at the farm that they recently bought back in 2016. And I was like, oh, it's that Dan. Okay, this all makes sense now. And so I decided to do the clinic. I didn't have a horse at the time, but did the clinic with them using some of Dan's horses that he had in training or some of his personal horses, and just got hooked on it. And Elizabeth and I had talked previously about me getting a horse and keeping it at their place. And so after the clinic especially, I decided, hey, the best way to learn this is to do it myself and have a horse that hasn't started it and start them from the ground up, basically doing the Liberty stuff. So I acquired my horse Remington, and they were nice enough to let me keep him at his place. Wasn't really working for them at first, was just kind of boarding there. Dan would give me some lessons and stuff. And then one time they needed help at another expo that they went up to. And I was in school, but I was like, you know what? I can easily ditch classes for a few days and go do this adventure with you guys. So I did that, and I guess they liked me and liked how I worked and stuff. So kind of started doing more with them and really evolved into a more permanent role there. So
brilliant. So tell us a bit more about Remington then. I believe he was a rescue.
Yes. So I found Remington on Facebook through a kill auction page, basically. He's approximately, when I got him, he's approximately 6. He's a paint thing. I have absolutely no idea of his background history. Don't even know what breed he is.
He's beautiful.
He's definitely one of a kind. And I saw a picture of him, and against my better judgment was like, that is the horse for me. Something spoke to me at that point, and I was like, okay, I really want to go and see him. So I was able to go and see him, and he was skin and bones, not trained at all, even though he was basically being sold on the auction as a kid's horse. But when I got on him for the first time, all he wanted to do was run. So I was like, okay, we got some work to do. But thankfully, Dan was able to, and Elizabeth, they were all able to help me kind of restart him and really get going kind of on our adventure, both ridden and at Liberty. But yeah, he's my heart horse 100%. He's the first horse I've ever owned, and I am so incredibly lucky to have found him.
Oh, brilliant.
So yeah, I love him to death. Like, I'm kind of obsessed with him. If you can't tell, like, go see my Facebook or my Instagram, and it's basically all pictures of him. So.
I know that feeling. So tell us a bit more about the journey with him then, the highs and lows. So, you know, when you got him home and it was supposed to be this kid's horse.
Yeah, so I got on him, kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt of, okay, like, he's a pretty chill dude. Like, he won't try to kill you, really. Like, he won't try to buck you off or anything like that. He just likes to go fast. So if you're just at a walk, anybody could ride him. As soon as you ask him into anything a little bit faster than that, at least at the beginning, all he'd want to do is run straight through your hands. I got thrown off a couple of times, mostly my own fault of just not being balanced or expecting him to, like, zig, and I zagged, kind of a thing. So that was definitely frustrating, just because I felt a little bit out of my league with a horse that was, like, difficult in some ways, and we've definitely struggled, especially with him just wanting to run through my hands under saddle. But we've worked on it over the years, and now, like, he's a completely different horse. Then we still have those moments when he just wants to run, but I'm definitely better at riding them out and figuring out how to kind of get him back to focusing to where he needs to be. A lot of the highs have just been the adventures that we have gone on. He's been able to go to some expos with Dan and been in the arena with thousands of people watching his demonstrations, and just the kind of exposure for me and for him to go to some of those big shows. He's moved. I got him in Kentucky back when I was there. He's moved to Colorado with me when I went back for vet school last fall. And then he went up to Wisconsin to hang out with some friends while I was on a leave of absence. And he's been down in Texas with me when I've been here, scattered throughout this past year. And he'll go back to Colorado with me in January.
Oh.
Biggest highs for sure have been through the ILHA, so the International Liberty Horse Association, especially the championship show this October, which was online. He and I won the non-pro freestyle, as well as the non-pro intermediate, distinguished, and advanced level 2.
Wow.
So that was a pretty big, you know, kind of pat on the back of him and me, because I knew he had it in him, but we just hadn't really shown before. And it was pretty exciting for me to really see that, like, we were kind of, like, competitive at that level, and, like, oh, okay, like, maybe what I've been doing has been working. And then in the freestyle, we also were reserve champion out of all of the entries, so including the pros, which was not expected at all. I'm really good friends with a lot of people that competed both on the pro and the non-pro, and then in the senior and youth divisions. So to kind of know what they're capable of and have seen, like, how, like, we ended up, like, kind of beating them, I was like, oh, how'd that happen? But at the same time, like, it made me very, very proud of all the progress that Remy and I have made. Lows for us, he got diagnosed with EPM, which is equine protozoal myoencephalitis. It's a neurologic disease that's pretty much not understood. So that's been a little bit frustrating, just because it's not like he's not super neurologic or anything, but there's definitely things about him, like with the way that he can move, or just muscle deprivation that he's had, and kind of mental things that he's been going through, where it does make it a little bit hard sometimes. But I think we figured the treatment out for that, and he's gotten a lot better. So it's just something to stay on top of. So that was hard. That got diagnosed in July. And then other than that, he's a very emotional horse, and he's very touchy-feely. So he picks up on everything that's, like, anything that I'm putting out there, anything anybody else is putting out there. So a lot of the times I get very frustrated with that, and then he just acts out of frustration and goofs off and does something that makes me more frustrated, and it's kind of this circle down the drain of, like, okay, we should probably just quit, but how dare you be annoying to me right now? Like, but we've gotten a lot better at kind of knowing when to to quit so that it doesn't get to a bad point.
They do tend to hold a mirror up to us, don't they? Quite a lot.
Yeah, but horses, they have a mind of their own.
They do. Well, I loved your freestyle. I thought it was great. I stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning to watch them all. And yeah, I loved yours. I wasn't sure whether it was supposed to be Stonehenge or not. Was
yeah,
it?
So it was from Outlander, which is a TV and book series.
Right.
But it's kind of like Stonehenge and this like the mystical stone circle kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I couldn't have asked for a better freestyle, and it was kind of spur of the moment to film on that day because of the fog, and it really worked out. So
I'll have to share it on my page so people that are listening, if they don't have a clue what I'm talking about, I can pop it on there. Watch it.
Yeah.
But the music.
It was a lot of fun.
Great. So brilliant. So is he your first horse, or have you had horses before?
So he is my first horse, and I lucked out. Dan always has this thing of saying that you get spoiled if you find like a great horse from the very beginning. And I totally agree, because Remington, he has his difficulties, and they're like always going to be things that he struggles with or I struggle with. But overall, like I could not have asked for an easier horse to like learn how to do things with, because he just picks it up and excels at it. So it makes me look a lot better because he's naturally talented at it.
Brilliant. So when did you say you got him? How long have you had him?
It'll be 4 years in February.
4 years. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Very good. Right. So one of my questions was, how much help have you had with him? Well, obviously you've had quite a lot.
I've had so much help. So much help. I would not be where I am with him without all the people that my path has crossed with. To begin with, obviously I worked for Dan and Elizabeth from the very beginning since I've had him. And Dan and Elizabeth have both helped me exponentially with him. And a lot of people will ask me, like, how'd you get your Liberty so good in such a short amount of time? And like, what I'll say is, like, a lot of the times when people are starting out in the equine industry, they start with trainers that are still good, but not quite like, top of the top in their discipline. And I was blessed by some unknown reason to be able to start at the very top with people like Dan and Elizabeth and all the people that they're associated with. So I've had a lot of help from just experts in the industry of like the Liberty stuff, or even like the cow horse training, which is something that I'm starting to kind of dabble in now that I've been over in Texas with Katie and Elliot Holtzman. And just the expos that I've been to and the clinics I've been to and the shows that I've been a part of. Like I went to the World Equestrian Games with Dan, and just seeing like that level of training has definitely helped me, whether Remy's there with me or not, just to be exposed to like people that really know what they're doing right off the bat. But yeah, I've had so much help with him, just with being able to participate in clinics with Dan and other people in the industry that Dan knows and has therefore helped me network with.
I think I'm just going to come over and rent a big like RV or something and just turn up on people's doorsteps and go,
please do. We'd love to have you.
Oh, funny. Oh, my Facebook lives are turning into like a Dan fan club. I must try and get him on here one day.
I'm sure he'd love to. Yeah, he's helped a lot of us out, and like it's a big family now, honestly. Like it's a great community.
Brilliant. Right, so I've got a crazy little question here. So do you get that little voice in your head that says, I have no idea what I'm doing and I really don't know what to do next with this horse? And if so, how do you deal with it?
I mean, who doesn't get that little voice in their head at some point? And I get it all the time. For me, it's a lot of the times because I think I'm not as far along as like a lot of my peers are. I honestly haven't been doing the horse stuff for all that long, just because I was a competitive runner for basically until sophomore year of college, and that took up a lot of time. So it comes with the territory of dealing with horses. They're another creature that has their own mind, so it does get difficult, because like even if you're like doing everything you want to do right, like a lot of the times they're just going to be like, and don't really want to today, like even though you're doing everything right. So for me, it's just kind of like recognizing that horses have their own mind and that every horse learns differently, and just trying to adapt and not get too down on myself if things aren't working right. It definitely helps, like looking back and seeing how much progress I've made as a person, or my horse has made, or the training horse that came in has made. Like that definitely kind of reinforces, okay, like maybe I do know what I'm doing sometimes. And just being okay with asking questions and asking for help, because most people in the horse industry, like they will totally help you out if you have like a question of like, hey, so this didn't work, like what do I do now? And I think that's one of the great things about this Liberty community that we're building, is we don't always have to have clinics or lessons. We can just send somebody a video, like one of our friends, and be like, hey, I tried this out to get this done, and this is what happened. My horse ran off and it's kind of a disaster. Like, what do you recommend? Like, do you have any ideas on how to work it better? And they can be like, oh, well, here, like try this instead. Like, tell me how it goes, because I've never tried it either, but who knows? Like, let's just play around with it. So yeah, I mean, everybody doesn't know what they're doing a lot of the time, and just asking for help when you need it, and just trying to remember, like, it's okay to not know what you're doing, because you'll figure it out eventually, and the horses will help you figure it out.
Yeah. It is daring to experiment, isn't it? Everybody said that. And when was it Miranda that was on last time? She said she always asks how. How can I get my horse to do that? How can I achieve that? And that really stuck with me from the chat with her. It's like, you know, we know what we want to get, but just to put it out into the universe, like, how am I going to do that? Is really quite powerful.
Definitely. But sometimes it just takes playing around with it enough, and yes, you always risk, like, in air quotes, like ruining something that you've already achieved, or ruining the horse. But in the end, like, really, pretty much everything can be fixed in some way, shape, or form. So it's okay to like play around and see if you can do it better, because like that's how people evolve and learn how to do it better, is by just trying different things.
What I find really frustrating, I put a post about it on Facebook the other day. I was walking the dog and there was a massive rainbow, and I thought, God, this is just like learning. Like, it's like trying to get the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and it, like, you just think you've got a concept, or you've mastered a technique or something, and then the goalpost changes and it moves, and you think, oh, I didn't know that at all. Like, or something else pops up and I want to try that, and you think, oh, just when I thought I was getting somewhere. So
yeah, it's frustrating, but it comes with the territory, and all I can say is just try to face it with as much of a positive attitude, and know that eventually, even if you're taking like 2 steps forward and 10 steps back, eventually you'll get to where you want to go.
Yeah, that's right. Progress isn't linear, is it? You're right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. So how did you get, well, we know how you got involved in Liberty then, landing at Dan's.
Yep. And we always have this running joke. I'm a very quiet, introverted person, which Dan always finds very entertaining, because he tries to make me feel uncomfortable. But the very first time I went on the road with just him and one other person, I was just sitting in the back of the car, like, just quiet, as quiet as possibly I could be. And he asked Elizabeth the next day, he's like, so are you sure she like likes me? Because like it seems like she hates me because she's so quiet all the time. But they took a chance on a very quiet back row in the classroom kind of girl, and I mean, I don't know how or why, but I'm very glad they did.
Oh, brilliant. So yeah, what do you find most challenging about it then, about doing Liberty?
I had to think about this one for a little bit, because there's the obvious answers of like Liberty in itself is difficult because you don't have a connection besides like a physical connection to your horse most of the time. But for me, I think like the age-old saying of like the horse is the window to your soul is like one of the most beautiful and also most challenging parts about Liberty, because a lot of you gets exposed when you're working in Liberty, and like things that you don't think would get exposed like do. And so for example, like I tend to like get frustrated really easily, of just like, especially if things are not in my control. I'm like, why aren't you doing it right? Like, and then I realize, oh, I'm not doing it right. And like my horse is running off, and I'm kind of like up like this with my energy, and Dan will be like put your shoulders down. I'm like, but they are down. Like, what are you talking about? They are down. He's like, he like comes over and physically puts my shoulders down, and my horse comes back to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay. So when I get frustrated, my shoulders go up, and that makes the horse go. Gotcha. Cool. So it's definitely interesting to see like just your emotions within yourself, or like the way you're feeling, whether it's like your mood, you've had a bad day, anything like that, and just seeing how it can affect the horse, whether it's in your body language or just in the energy that you're kind of exuding. It's a very challenging part about Liberty, because you have to pay attention to it, and you have to look inward and kind of see like what's going on in my own mind, in my own body language, like what am I putting out there that's making this horse act in a certain way. And a lot of the times like the horse is just doing what it wants, but some of the times it is like what you're putting out there, and like you do have to pay attention to, are you walking forward, are you walking backwards, like how are your shoulders carrying, like where are your whips if you're using whips, like that kind of stuff. And Remy has definitely made me very much more aware of myself, which has been great and also very complicated and slightly irritating at times. The other most challenging thing about Liberty is kind of finding the balance between enough versus not enough. The method that we tend to use is like the pressure release kind of system, as opposed to like positive reinforcement. And some of the things you have to add more pressure to get a result, but then there's a line where you cross it and there's too much pressure, and then it doesn't have anything like work the way that you want it to. But it's finding that line of like, okay, when is enough and when is not enough? Like, when do I need to like kind of not just be shy, like, come on, please go forward, and like actually like go forward kind of a thing. And then with that being said, like being okay with stopping, because a lot of the times like you get really caught up in the moment. And I think my biggest example is like with the lay down. I really, really wanted my horse to be able to lay down. In like it's a good trick that everybody really likes to have, and it's like, oh, like my horse lays down. And the way that we do it, it just involves a dressage whip and a halter. And I would ask, and I finally got my horse to get down on his knees. And I was super excited, but then he got up. And so instead of just being okay with stopping at that point and quitting and being like, good job, buddy, like you made a little step of progress, I kept asking. And I kept asking, like up to the pressure way too much. And he just freaked out and mentally shut down. And then it took me 3 weeks to fix that and get back to the point where we had been. And if I had just stopped and rewarded him for getting that little half step further, I would have gotten the lay down the next day.
Yeah.
So knowing when, like being okay with stopping, even though you get caught up in the moment, I think is one of the most challenging things with Liberty, because some of the sessions can be like 5 minutes long. And then like, you're like, hey, quit now, just leave him alone. But like, you're like, no, I wanted to work with you for like an hour. Like, why'd you get it done in 5 minutes? Like, come on.
Yeah, knowing there's always tomorrow. That's a
so I think just being patient and being able to like say, okay, like that was enough for today. Like you did a good job. You got what I wanted you to do done. And even though I still have more in me, like you might not. And being okay with stopping. So challenging parts about Liberty, or at least some of them.
So what do you love about it then?
Oh, everything, to be completely honest. What I tend to say about Liberty is it's complicated and simple at the same time. It is a very simple connection of like, it's just you and the horse, and they're moving around, doing whatever you're asking to. And that connection it's really simple when you think about it. But at the same time, it's really complicated because it does take time to get to certain points. And there's just so much you can do with Liberty, whether it's like just, obstacles, or you can go into like some classical dressage moves or reining moves, anything like that. Like the sky is the limit. Like I've seen people teach crazy things at Liberty where like you never would have thought that it would be a thing. For example, there's a guy out in the UK named Ben Atkinson, and he can do like a capriole.
Yeah, he's only about an hour or so away from me.
Just like, how did you ever think to do that move in the first place with like equipment on, let alone teach it at Liberty?
Yeah.
So I think it's just an ever evolving discipline where everybody's just going to keep coming up with new and exciting things to do. And I think that's like the coolest part about it, is that it really allows people to like express their creativity in this art form that is horses, as opposed, like that's their art. And it's just really cool seeing what people come up with, and it's constantly inspiring and exciting. And then obviously, like, you have the connection with your horses that I won't say you don't get in other disciplines, because you do. But for a lot of people, it's difficult to ride every day, or like they physically can't ride every day. And so being able to do like the groundwork stuff and the liberty, and like kind of find that expression of themselves in a horse, I think is really cool.
Brilliant. So tell us about the clinic that you've just done then. So it was 8 days, an 8-day clinic.
So there was actually a 5-day clinic and then a 3-day clinic.
Right. Was it all liberty or?
Yeah, so the 5-day clinic was an advanced liberty clinic. So it was from a whole bunch of people that had previously done clinics with Dan, all came together. And it was really, really cool, because we don't always get to see like people of that level all together, like doing stuff off the ridden horse or with multiple horses working at liberty. And like they're all at different stages too. So some of them were like way further along than others, but like just even watching people like start getting ready for that kind of stuff, you're like, whoa, now I want another horse so I can do that too. But it's just really inspiring to like see what people are coming up with, and like them playing around with different ways to get stuff done, and just kind of being able to bounce each other's ideas around and stuff. And then the 3-day clinic that just finished was an intro to liberty clinic, which, even though to a lot of people it's not quite as exciting, because you don't have like your advanced maneuvers, or you're not pairing horses, but it's the foundations of what liberty is. And like watching people be able to start that connection with their horses, and just see how much progress they make from a horse that hasn't ever done liberty before, and a human that hasn't ever done liberty before, to like on that last day, their session in the round pen, and then finally getting those circles, and that you just tell how excited and happy they are. And I think that's really what the discipline is based off of, is that foundation. And that's what even the advanced people go back to on a daily basis.
Yeah. So. Well, we've got our first 4-day clinic booked for May, so we're really excited about that. So I can't wait.
Be one to look forward to, I'm sure.
See what I can achieve in 4 days.
Exactly.
So you are now at vet school. So
yes, I am.
When did you decide to go to vet school then?
So I call myself an early identifier. It's kind of a term that was coined by the American Veterinary Medical Association podcast that they put on. So I wanted to be a vet ever since I was a kid. I always knew I wanted to do something with animals, and my brother always joked that I shouldn't be a farmer because I was a girl. And so I was like, okay, I'll be a vet instead. I have definitely not had the conventional path to being a vet. I wanted to be ever since I was a kid, went to undergrad, was a pre-vet student, was studying animal and equine sciences. And then through a few things that had happened with my family back at home in Colorado, and just kind of me of not really knowing if it's exactly what I wanted or not, Dan and Elizabeth convinced me to take a year deferral in between when I originally got into vet school right after undergrad, and then when I actually started. So I had a year off in between to kind of close some things up with my family that needed to be accomplished, and also continue working with Dan and Elizabeth, and go on the road with them a little bit. And then I went to school for 1 semester last fall, right before all the COVID stuff happened. And it was really tough, to be completely honest. It wasn't like the educational part of stuff that was hard, but it was the transition for me of working on the farm every single day, and being around horses every single day, and around people that all like share that passion with me, into going back into a classroom setting. It was really hard for me to kind of be okay with that. And so I struggled a lot that first semester, and ended up asking for a leave of absence to kind of figure out my life a little bit better, because I really missed the horse training stuff a lot. And even though I had my horse with me, I wasn't able to spend quite as much time with him as I wanted to. So for some unknown reason, the university that I attend, Colorado State University, granted me another leave of absence. So basically that just means that my spot is still there when I decide to go back, and they gave me a year. And then COVID happened, so it was kind of like, oh, well, that was kind of perfect. So this year I've been able to kind of go and see what else is out there, because I always wanted to be a vet and I didn't really think about what else there is. So I got to go play around with some other horse trainers and have really kind of figured out, like, yes, I love training horses and I love the Liberty stuff, but being a vet is really my sole passion, and that's what I want to continue pursuing.
So is that the plan then, to go back?
Yeah, I'm excited, other than the fact that it's all online still, which it'll be a little bit challenging. But I think that I've learned so much about myself and kind of how to better prepare for that transition this time, that I think I've kind of set myself up for success a little bit better.
Yeah. I know my vet said to me when I was very young, she said, oh, don't be a vet, you won't have time for your own horses.
Yeah, exactly.
So how are you going to sort of combat that then when you start again? Have you got a plan of action for how to balance things?
It's it's being more touched on in the veterinary industry about like really balancing your own like emotional health as well as like your career, which I really appreciate that people are starting to talk more about it, because it is really important. Like equine vets, the burnout rate is crazy high, where some people don't even make it a full year in the industry before they decide to just quit, because they don't ever take time for themselves. So for me, it's definitely like top priority of making sure that I get to do what makes me happy, so that I can continue to like have the fuel to like go and chase this professional career. So I have a goal of getting out to the barn at least once a day, and staying there for at least an hour. I, in the past, have like just gone there for stress relief and cuddles with the pony, or just working him, because for me that brings me a lot of joy, even if it's not a great day. And then I also tend to study with him, where I'll have my notes, and I learn best by like talking about my notes. So I'll like tell him about my classes that I've been taking, and tell him about like, oh, like, so here's like this thing, and like he's just staring at me like, you're stupid, what are you doing? But he'll just be chilling in the pasture and grazing, and I'll just talk through my notes before my tests, so that I know what I'm studying for, and all that. So that definitely helps. And then obviously like taking time to do stuff outside of horses and school, so hanging out with my family and friends, and going hiking, or at this time of the year going skiing. So just trying to really balance all of that and continue to build my passion for training horses and working at Liberty. And that's going to be really exciting with like the new clubs that we're having. And since I am the Colorado club manager, kind of building that and trying to build the community up there. So
yeah, now we've got a global community of clubs as well. It's exciting. Exactly. Brilliant. So we're nearly there. Last two questions. So how do you believe in yourself and your horse?
For me, it's always been really hard. Like I haven't always had like the best self-image, but it's gotten a lot better. And I think a lot of that's from just working with horses and kind of seeing all the pieces come together and being like, oh, like I did that. And just looking at the progress that I've made, like both personally and with my horse, of like looking back on where we were even a couple of months ago and how much we've gotten done, has really built my self-confidence. Also just being able to like see my horse out in the pasture and be like, oh, well, that was a fancy move you just did there, so like I know you're capable of it, like just let's tap into that potential and see what we can get, has been good. And especially before like the last show in October for the ILHA, he and I had a little heart-to-heart where I basically told him, I was like, listen, dude, like I know what you're capable of, like I know you're so amazing, like let's just go show everybody else. And we did. And so that was kind of reassuring to me of like, hey, I do know what I'm doing most of the time, and like we can get some pretty cool stuff done. But yeah, really just like looking back at where I was and where I'm now, and having supportive people around that I can bounce ideas off of, and people that check me when I say something stupid or notice when I need help, and like just being able to have relationships where it's okay to ask for help too, whether it's with horses or just with life. And I think that's one of the amazing things about the Liberty community is everybody's willing to help each other. Like they might not completely divulge their secrets straight off the bat, but like they'll be like, oh, well, like what you just did was like super cool, or maybe try this, and like that might work a little bit better. And like we're all still learning. So just having that supportive community. And then one of my biggest things is a phrase that's basically that says passion fuels purpose. And I believe it goes both ways, where passion and purpose fuel each other. So kind of staying true to my own values and what my purpose and my passion are. And yes, it's okay to not have it completely figured out, but at least having like kind of a mind frame of like where I'm going or what I want to accomplish professionally in vet med, or even with like horses, or just in life in general. And that's definitely like helped me believe more in myself, of like staying true to what that passion is and chasing it, and like finding that purpose as well.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. When it feels right, it does kind of fuel your self-belief, doesn't it? Do you think your background as a runner helped with like resilience and self-belief?
I think it definitely has in a lot of ways. Being a competitive runner made me very adaptable to a lot of things, because a lot of the times you're not going to have like ideal racing situations, and either you can shut down and do terribly in your race, or you can figure out how to dig deep and get through it. And I think that's definitely given me a lot of resilience and made me very adaptable to be able to like face different challenges, and get through it, even if you got to dig deep and it hurts a lot.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so finally, what are the goals for 2021 then?
So I have a lot, and they're pretty scattered. Obviously with school, I would like to continue to do well in school and really like get more involved in it and feel more like it's a real deal, because a lot of the times I'm like, oh yeah, school, like what's that? We'll deal with that when we get there. So trying to set myself up for success in school is definitely one of my goals. With my pony Remy, I have a couple of goals. We've been working on our Piaf a little bit, and I'm pretty excited. Like for the random paint thing that he can move pretty fancy. So I'm hoping to kind of get that down, as well as a few other things, such as like his lead changes at Liberty, which we've dabbled at a little bit, but haven't quite solidified. I would love to be able to go to the International Liberty Horse Championship show in October in Kentucky if they have it. And then getting my club up and running and really building that community in Colorado, because I've seen what Katie has done down here in Texas with her Southwestern club, and the community is just crazy. And I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest things that I miss once I go back to Colorado, for sure, is that Liberty community. So I'd love to get it up and running and start having some demos, practices, lessons, who knows what else. I don't really know what I'm doing when it comes to a club, but I have great mentors to help me with it, and wonderful people such as yourself to just bounce ideas off of, as to like, you know, who would have ever thought of like having interviews with people across the world about Liberty stuff, and like here you are like getting it done, and it's like, well, that's cool. Like I made sure to share it on my page, because I think it's a great way for us all to continue building the community.
I think that's where you're exactly right, though, with the passion and the purpose thing. Though, when you feel passionate about something, you have so much energy, and things just start to fall into place, and things happen. And I didn't even really think about it. I just thought, oh, you know, and it just happened, and it's like, woo, how exciting!
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like your entire purpose of life. Like you can have many different purposes and many different passions, and you'll find that so many of them just start to intermingle, and they just feed off of each other, and you just excel even more because of that.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's been really lovely talking to you, and sharing your energy, which is so yeah, have a wonderful Christmas, and thank you so much for
you as well. Thank you for having me. great idea on your part, for sure.
Brilliant. Thank you. All right. Well, you take care.
Take care. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.